Let's go to the AFC North. But first, just give it a look. Make sure, if you're on YouTube right now, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done it already. Hit that thumbs up for this video if you haven't done it already. Helps the show, helps you stay informed. And hit the bell as well, right? So you know when we're going live, as we do 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday here on Check the Mic. AFC North, let's start with the Baltimore Ravens. Another one of those teams. I think they've got less to do this year than last year. Remember last year, they had a lot of questions on the offensive line and where they were going to find a couple starters, either in free agency or the draft. Not a ton of specific spots to fill here. Patrick Mekari is a free agent. They only have a couple receivers under contract, so they'll definitely need some receiver depth, even though the 1 and the 2, Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers, are back. Perhaps a starting linebacker, but they have options there. I think the 2 biggest ones probably in the secondary are Darius Washington at safety, had an awesome season last year, breakout year. He'll hit free agency, and then Brandon Stevens, probably the weak spot in the secondary for them last year, also a free agent opposite last year's first rounder, Nate Wiggins. So not a ton to do for Baltimore, but the big question, how do you get over the hump and make that Super Bowl run, get through Kansas City and Buffalo?
Yeah, and I think it would make a ton of sense for them to bring back a Darius Washington.
Yes.
Round 1 in all the team building offseason stuff is always re-signing your own players, trying to prevent guys from hitting the marketplace. Safety is one where I think it's very achievable because I think it's a flooded safety market this offseason. I don't think that those guys are going to get big money. So Baltimore, I think, should have a pretty reasonable task in their hands to convince a Darius Washington's agent to say, hey, you're not going to get massive money in the open market. Sign with us. We love you. We'll do this deal. So keep Washington in the building. Yeah, they're another team that needs a starting guard from somewhere, but I don't think that's necessarily like they're not in the Trey Smith sweepstakes. They don't need to go big to make that happen. They just need a starter from somewhere with Mekari hitting free agency, and maybe they want to bring him back as well. And then, yeah, like wide receiver depth, and maybe that depth, they're in a strange spot where generally, as you said, they've only got a couple of guys under contract, but they're 1 and 2 on the depth chart. That being said, that doesn't need to be the case. Like if they found number 1, each one of those guys could easily become 2 and 3. So they need depth, but the depth could actually be the number 1 wide receiver that they need to find and have potentially needed to find for years.
All right, let me circle back to receiver, but just to touch on Darius Washington really quickly, just fascinating case. He had less than 150 snaps in his career, 2021 through 23. All of a sudden, plays over 800 snaps, starting safety, 86 PFF coverage grade. It was like Mike Renner 2021 draft takes, justified essentially for Darius because he was a really productive college player, never had injuries, never really had opportunities at the NFL level, and was just making plays every single week for Baltimore. So I think, yes, just get him back right after what you saw from him last season. I'm with you. Like we've debated before how much Baltimore needs the quote wide receiver 1. And I think Zay Flowers has been really nice and Rashad Bateman has been good. And again, air quote wide receiver 1. I don't know if Baltimore needs that guy. I don't know if that guy is necessarily available. But what would you do there? I mean, we've talked about Devontae Adams for other teams. Is he the type of guy that you need here or would want there? Or is it just, just get as many speed and quicks types of players that add to Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and, just make it difficult for defenses in that way?
Yeah, like it would be more. I think Bateman made a really big difference to that team last season in a way that he hasn't always in his career. Like I actually think he's developed into a much better receiver than he was early on, and injuries have certainly been a part of that. I'm not saying, you need to go find that guy. And certainly, they don't have a ton of money to spend in free agency. I think they could spend most of it in locking up guys that they want to prevent hit the market like Washington. But like, if I was drafting a wide receiver, late in the first round, 27 or whatever, if that guy became my number 1, 2, or 3, it's a good move from their perspective, right? So I think that's basically my only point with that is there's a spot on that depth chart available, and we just don't know where the spot is. Either way, it's a move they should be making happen. So, like, if they went into this draft, you pick number 27, there's a wide receiver there that you like, you grab that guy. Anywhere he fits in the top 3 of my depth chart, it's a good move, I think, for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the Ravens moves here too are just stay the course type of moves. They've got good depth. I think their defense overall took a bit of a hit from where they were in 2023, but the second half of the season was much better than the first half. They're another team. I know they drafted Wiggins in the first round last year. They're the other team that I'll mention as a cornerback option with that first round pick, right? To pair with Wiggins. Could be back-to-back years where they do draft corners in the first round. Marlon Humphrey has kind of settled in as more of that nickel type of movable piece. They do have that as an option, but the starting outside corner opposite Nate Wiggins, I think, probably the biggest need heading into this offseason. And so they could dabble in free agency. I think that's probably more likely a draft pick there, though, for Baltimore. And then, like every other team, there's a little bit of future proofing. Travis Jones is coming due soon here from a contract perspective. You're going to have to pay Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum over the next couple of years as far as former first-round draft picks go. So I think just depth on the defensive line for every team is important. But as Kyle Van Noy gets a little bit older and Adafe Owe, gets to the end of his deal, just more defensive line depth. So I think the edge draft market could work out pretty well for the Ravens in the first, or the cornerback depth, I think, in this late first round could work out pretty well for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think all the areas of their need are likely to be pretty solid spots at that area of the draft in 27. Where do they pick beyond that? They're in the second round, 59. So, 59 gets you again. I think this is a good draft for the positions of need that they have. I think you're going to get defensive line depth in that second round spot. Maybe that's a spot where you can get your guard. If you don't bring back Macari, if you don't dip into the free agent market, there might be a starting guard available at that spot in the second round. So, yeah, I think the Ravens are going to have options.
Are they a Tez Johnson type of team, or is that too redundant to Zay Flowers and his skill set?
I think it depends what you get out of Tez Johnson. What he's going to get a lot of Tank Dell comps, right? Because of size and because of speed. Right. Even though Dell's workouts were a little bit weird.
And because he's really good and you want to make him work.
Right. But the difference between the two, or one of the big differences between the two, is that Tank Dell in college was deployed as a legitimate number one wide receiver, as opposed to you are tiny and fast, you're going to play a gimmick role, and then we will scale up your usage as you become a good player. He was a number one wide receiver, so there was years worth of tape of an NFL team to look at and say, he can make this work at that size, and maybe we have to protect him a little bit, but he can be a real wide receiver who just happens to be tiny. Whereas Tez Johnson was deployed very much as a gimmick type of receiver. And so now you're in the world of Rondale Moore, where it's okay, we love what you can do, but we have to project what you did in college to the role we're going to need in the NFL and figure out if you can do that. Now, it's not as extreme as it was with Rondale Moore, but it's the same idea, right? You're taking this guy and projecting him into a role that you don't really know if he's able to do. Whereas the Tank Dell thing, you had already seen him doing the stuff you're going to be asking him to do. So I love Tez Johnson as a player. I think he's dynamic and dangerous and a fascinating prospect, but I don't know if he can do the things that Baltimore would want him doing, or if you're going to be stuck with effectively two guys that are short area, horizontal, underneath, manufactured touch monsters, and Bateman is your only real wide receiver at that point.
That's just where I go with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. I'm not saying a Devontae Adams wide receiver one type wouldn't work there, or if he had Mike Evans or someone as an X winner on the outside. I'm not saying that wouldn't work with Lamar. I just don't know if you ever need it with Lamar Jackson because of the other advantages that he creates. And when you lean into those mismatch types, those space type players, or say a Savion Williams from TCU, who's 6'3", 230 with they were giving him running back snaps at TCU. Do you just want more of those types of players where any given week it's oh, by the way, try to stop Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and this 230-pound receiver that we're just going to move around, and Zay Flowers, right? That's the only thing I'm I'm thinking, with the Ravens, where I don't know if Lamar is ever going to be the guy that's just going to pepper the ball 15 times to Mike Evans on the outside or Devontae Adams or whoever it might be. The one other thing we do need to discuss is the Mark Andrews discussion here with Baltimore and the idea that they could move on from him. They do have Isaiah Likely. I mean, it is one of the better 1-2 punches in the NFL when it comes to tight end. Of course, Andrews had the big drop in the divisional round game. That's not the reason that they're talking about potentially moving on, but they have Isaiah Likely, and they could move on from Andrews and replenish the tight end spot in a pretty deep tight end draft as well.
Definitely possible. I think, I wouldn't be rushing to do that given how good he's been for them. Yeah, it's something they could do, but a move I wouldn't be falling over myself to make happen without needing to.
Last thing, Makari's the starting left guard. They just had an issue with Ben Cleveland off the field. Right. He's a free agent as well. I mean, I think they're going to have to address that spot. I could see that being anytime through the draft. I don't even know if they're going to dabble in free agency there.
And Faalele at right guard. I mean, former offensive tackle, kind of convert, moved inside. He's been okay, but not great. I mean, he's definitely better, I think, at guard than he is at tackle, where his movement is a problem. But he's not so good that you're like, we're completely set at that spot either. Like they should be in the guard market this offseason.
Would they go guard first round with Tyler Booker if he was there? I don't know. I think they'd rather go with the corner or defensive line depth there or receiver. I think they'd go higher value positions, but just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, they could be a team looking for, a guard in the second round if they could find one, as opposed to, I agree with you. I think they've got bigger priorities or bigger value positions that they would want with that first round pick. But in the second round, like, I think they could definitely be potentially interested in interior offensive linemen there.
All right, man. Have we fixed the Ravens?
Yeah.
Super Bowl, baby. Next year we get over the hump.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.